All right, joining us now in the Sevens Club. He's gearing up for year 2 of TST. Founder, owner, chairman, CEO of #United, Spencer Owen. Welcome to the show.
Gentlemen, how are we? We've got unfinished business here. Didn't quite get the $1 million last time. We're coming back for it. We're getting it this time. I hope.
Well, I have no doubt in my mind that you're going to come back with a hot team, a good team, the need and the want to win that $1 million. I guess we can start right there. Last year, you were approached. You guys joined up with TST. You're a part of the program. Your team's in last year. Your team's back this year. What did you think of when you first heard about TST versus what you think now?
I mean, first impressions when I first heard about TST was that it was right up my street. Like everything that # loves to be a part of. It was singing from the same hymn sheet, like innovative in football, changing the rule sets, trying new things. We just loved the idea of it. Obviously, you didn't know what to expect from the actual execution of it because it was the first one, right? I knew a little bit about TBT and the massive name they have and the stuff they've done, so I was hopeful. But I think even my expectations were exceeded when we got out there. Everyone at # has such a good time. Like
Yeah.
the venue was unreal. The mood of the camp, it was so positive. Everyone was trying to win that $1 million. It was competitive, but it was still in a nice way. I'd say it didn't boil over really. And the only thing that could have been better would have been winning the $1 million. Other than that, honestly, it's one of the best things we've done. We can't wait to do it again. One of the bad things about it is we have to make the unpopular decisions of who to take because obviously not everyone gets to go. That's the hardest bit about it because everyone wants to be there. But it's just one of the best things we've been involved in, to be honest.
Spencer, what was your roster size? How many guys did you bring?
We took 17, but I was one of them, which is like half a man, right? In terms of football, it doesn't really count. I did play a game though, Jeff.
You're the gaffer though. You kind of running the show.
Yeah, I got involved in the dead rubber game, which I only got involved in because it was dead rubber. We still won it though. I will put that out there. We did win. But yeah, I was a spare. I was a mascot, really. 16 actual footballers, which I think was probably about right. There was some bigger. We didn't use all the spots. We could have had a couple more. And there was some. I think actually in our group, I think it was Cincinnati who had the smallest group, Natty SC. I think they had like smallest squad. I think they had like maybe 11 players or something like that. It was.
I think Blade and Grass. I think we were around like 12, 13.
Yeah,
and we just tried to keep it really, but we were fucked at the end, man.
Yeah, I mean, you need more than 12, don't you? For sure.
Yeah. I think it's like that trick of you want to keep all the money,
Yeah,
keeping it. But you also want to be able to play and be available for every game. So
what do you think the sweet spot is? Numbers then? Size squad 15.
I think you definitely maybe have to have a second goalie. Like one is because there were some other players like Luis Robles, like he got injured and like his eye got like sliced open and like someone else had to go in net. I think Wondolowski jumped in net. So I think maybe that extra guy, that extra keeper, maybe he's a little bit better with his feet. So when things go into target time, the guy jumps in and he can play out from the back. And then you just add a few more young bucks or I'd say maybe 19, 20, give or take. But knowing that their roles are what their roles are,
Yeah.
Because then you never know with the travel and some people might be laying out in the sun, trying to get a suntan and they burn, like
exactly. Some might go out the night before the game. These things happen. That's one thing I definitely learned from the experience. If you can't win, you don't want to lose the final. It's better to go out when we went out and have a few nights out with the lads than it is. Obviously, you want to get to the final and win. But if we was sitting here now and we'd lost the final, I still wouldn't be over it.
Yeah,
if to be that close.
Yeah.
So I think either win the whole thing or go out in a blaze of glory.
Well, you mentioned when you guys did lose. That was one of the most exciting games of TST. Unfortunately, you were on the other end. The Como fans were crazy. Chris Paul was going crazy with the Como fans. Heather O'Reilly was in the Como stands for that game. And it was just kind of like an incredible moment for TST as a whole. Were you able to step back at any point later and be like, okay, that was an awesome football game. That was an awesome soccer match that we were a part of, or are you only sour about losing that game?
It's hard to be sour because we come up against like Patrick Catrone. Like, you got to be realistic about the squad we took out. We took a squad of mostly semi-professional UK-based footballers, right? We had a couple of people like Greg Halford, who played in the Premier League, but obviously he's at the back end of his career. Mostly we were like, semi-pro or amateur footballers. When you come up against Patrick Catrone, who's in his prime, he's in his prime. I think he's 25 at the time. He's scored however many goals in Serie A for AC Milan. He's played for Wolves. I think Wolves bought him for 20 million. Obviously now he's at Como. Like, he was the best player I saw at that tournament in isolation. Certainly when we got to see him up close against us, he ran that game. So you have to kind of take your hat off and just say, like, fair enough. We gave it a good shot, though. I think you play that game a few more times, we win a few of them. Like, I don't think it was as clear as, we went into TST with only one goal. Well, we went into TST level, sorry. And it was obviously the one goal that won it. It felt we were like the underdogs a little bit in the game, not just because of that, because Como had that amazing support in the crowd as well.
They had all their fans there, man. It was like,
they were unreal.
It was great, the atmosphere wise.
No, and it's a compliment.
I can't believe you didn't say me, to be honest. I was like,
as the best player.
Any chance? Did you watch any blade and grass? What?
I did catch a bit of it, but I didn't catch maybe I missed the bits that would have put you above Catrone.
Oh, yeah.
It's a compliment to TST as well, right? That people like Patrick would come. I think it shows his affection for Como as well. Obviously, Cesc was there. Did Cesc get on the pitch at any point in the tournament, or was he just managed? I can't remember.
So he got banged up in training, in practice. Right. He was ready to go. He was in the practice uniform and he got banged up. But it was great because he ended up coaching, and then fast forward 4 months, he's the manager now, acting manager, maybe future manager of Como. So, I mean, we like to say he started his coaching run, his managerial run at TST. You mentioned, though, that your squad was semi-professionals. It's a great spot to ask you about the
transition, right?
The origin of hashtag, and what the team looked like originally versus what the team looks like now, and then what you want the team to look like 10 years from now. So really, the floor is yours to just take us from the beginning of hashtag.
Well, there's a couple remnants at TST. Myself and Jacko, who's our sub goalkeeper, we both played in the third group game because we'd already won the group at that point. And we actually have both been there since the beginning. And then Jacko was a very good footballer in his time as well, like semi-professional anyway. I wasn't. But if you take Jacko out of the equation, if we'd put our first original hashtag team in TST, we would have got absolutely smoked. Like, we had a couple half decent players, but mostly people like me who are like, Sunday league players, really. So it started off, as me and my mates. And we were decent for a Sunday team. We weren't bad. We won a lot of games, but we were sort of handpicking our opponents, and it was, mostly exhibition matches. It was a couple years into it when we entered to the non-league pyramid, which, if people don't know, obviously the beauty of the English football system is the mobility. You can actually just go up the leagues based on merit. It doesn't have to be like a franchise buy into a league situation. So we love that idea. So we entered the 10th division of English football. Obviously, Premier League is the top, number one. We entered the 10th, and we've had 3 promotions in the last 5 years since we've been in there. So we're now in the 7th. It gets kind of serious at the 6th in terms of it becomes a national league. Into a lot of travel and stuff. Obviously, the 4th is League 2. That's where the official professional football begins. But we've had a hell of a trajectory, and obviously the playing staff has changed dramatically.
What's your goal? What's your like short-term goal? What's your long-term goal, essentially?
Yeah, so it's a great question, because my short-term goal was actually, when we entered non-league, I had like a 5-year plan. I wanted to get to the levels we've got to with our men and women's team, because I knew we could survive at this level, and I knew we could compete. So it's the 7th tier for the men. Our women are in the 3rd tier. We're actually top of the 3rd tier. So if we go up this year, we go into the championship, and that's a full-time professional league. You've got to be a full-time outfit. So the next short-term things are professional football, and we still don't have our own stadium. So we ground share. So we'd love to get our own stadium. Long term, obviously, we shoot for the stars, and we look and we think, we can be a professional football club. We could get into the English Football League. Who knows how could we even get to the Premier League one day? It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money that I don't have. So we would have to change the way the club works in terms of structure. We'd have to win a lot of TSTs. I reckon we'd have to win about 100 of them to get to the Prem. So it's going to take a while. But yeah, I would never I'd never put a ceiling on what we can achieve, because if you probably asked me what we could have achieved 5 years ago, I wouldn't have told you half the stuff we've done.
Yeah.
So I think it's just about being realistic and making sure the club's always sustainable. I don't want to. I'm not one of these guys who's like desperate just to get to a certain league for like an ego reason. And I can say, oh, we got to League Two. If we do that and it means the club dies as a result because we lose all our money, I'm not interested. I want
Yeah.
it's like a legacy thing for me, Jeff. I want it to be like
Yep.
a family. My family are involved in it. Our manager just last week, and completely on merit, got to play his son for the first time because his son's just coming through. He's 18.
That's
He's gone through the reserves. He scored loads of goals, and he got his first chance in the first team. And for me, I look at it as like, I've got a little boy. He's nearly 3. If he likes football and he's half decent, if he's good enough, cool. He can play for hashtag. If he's not good enough, but he loves it, maybe he can help run the club. Like, that's what I really want to build, that long-term vision.
Or even better, he balls out and then he gets bought from hashtag.
Well,
Right.
or by the time he's old enough, we'll be the ones buying people, Jeff.
Exactly. I mean, that's, to be honest, I mean, that's spending 10 years in the UK and that kind of, that environment of the culture and families, like, it's what they live and breathe. It's in them, like there's nothing better than taking your son to a football match, or whether it's your daughter or whatever, it don't matter. It's like, they know football is on Saturday, Sunday, and it's like, it's a thing. And it's slowly starting to happen here. Obviously the US is massive, and you have the MLS and you have the USL, but there are becoming more and more generations of, around my time, people having families and they're raising their kids under, like, watching the Premier League game, watching La Liga, watching all football. And then they're growing up with that, and it just trickles down. And then eventually I think we have the aspirations to have that football culture essentially over here. But I love it, man. That's the one thing I miss, not being in the UK at the moment.
Did you have any run-ins with non-league? Did you play any non-league teams in FA Cup matches or anything? Like, what's the lowest level you ever played?
I'm trying to think. I think we had a League Two.
Okay.
I mean, my first preseason at Stoke, we went to, was it Torquay? All the way down. Yeah, Torquay. Yeah, like, we went through.
So they're a league above us now, Torquay. There's only one league between us now.
Yeah, so I think we had a few non-league teams that, like, for preseason stuff, and because over there, like, it's hard, man. They don't care who you are. It's like, they're playing against a Premier League team or championship team, like, oh, this is my opportunity to smash the life out of you, and, like, I might get seen, and it's like, you're just trying to go into the game not to get hurt, right?
Yeah, for you, it's like the least important game you'll play that year because you're the favourites and you expected to go many rounds further. For them, it's the biggest game of their career.
For sure. And exactly. But it's like, also, like, that's where other people do get found. Like, they might have an unbelievable game, then all of a sudden they're like, who's this kid been? Like, he just came out of his shell. And then they keep an eye out, there's scouts there or something, and then boom, that, like, might be, this guy is going to another club, and it's like,
there's a good parallel with the FA Cup and TST, because for non-league teams, the FA Cup is like a massive thing because it's a chance to make money. Basically, no one in non-league is thinking you're going to win the FA Cup, but every year some non-league team will get to the second round or even the third round. A few years ago, a club called Marine played Spurs in the third round. That would have earned them hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds from TV money, from, I mean, actually, in that instance, it was crazy because it was a COVID year. So they sold these online tickets to the game, and they sold like 300,000 of them or something crazy. They made a load of money, and it will set the club up for a decade. Whereas the top ends, some of the bigger European clubs almost look down on the FA Cup sometimes now because they see it as a distraction. But the beauty of the FA Cup is what it does for non-league. And so from a hashtag perspective, it's massive for us. But we're looking at TST the same way. It's very similar. Okay, you only get the money if you win, right? And it's a big ask. There's some great teams there. But 32 teams is a lot less, or 48 is a lot less than the hundreds and hundreds that are in the FA Cup. And we can't win the FA Cup. As much as we could tell the story that we could, it's never going to happen anytime soon. You've got to beat, like, Man
Well, that's
City.
like Leicester winning the league. And they did, right?
True.
But it is hard. Like, 100%. Like, they would rotate the squads, and then it gets serious, like, once it's go like the first round, you're playing against a Premier League team, then you see like the quality. And then you might see those teams that like kind of just jump through and they're like, oh, they beat a Premier League team. I'm like, they were caught off guard.
Yeah,
And then
yeah,
all
yeah.
of a sudden they're
100%.
the next and like that's when like the story, the Cinderella story kind of comes alive. And I think that's the best part of it is fans want that type of run. They
Yeah.
want that type of journey and they want to root for something like that. So I think it's great overall. I think there was I'm trying to remember the team, but it was like it was a guy who's like, yeah, I was a brickie like a
Yeah.
month
Yeah.
ago. And he's like, now I'm playing at fucking Old Trafford. And you're like, this is brilliant. And like those are pretty cool special moments, man.
That's why I think our level is maybe one of the hardest levels to play at. Obviously, not skill wise, it doesn't match the level you played at. But what our guys, a lot of them have full time jobs, some of them physical jobs, and
Yep.
they'll come from a building site, and then they've got to go and train 3 times a week. You know, it's like if you're at the bottom end of professional football, but you're full time, at least you might not make a lot of money, but at least you can be a footballer. Whereas the guys at our level, some of them are working on building sites and they have to turn up to train and still being expected to be very good. Do you know what I mean? Tax physically, it's super hard.
So how involved are you on like on the pitch? Are you there every single day? You like managing role, like as the owner and everything like that? Are you how hands on are you?
Yeah, so I go to every game, and I'm very much I work with the 2 managers much more than the players, so to speak. Like that was a big transition for me. It started where all the players were my mates, and then it had to transition to a point where I almost don't get too close to the players because, particularly in non-league, when you've got no transfer windows, it's just players can come and go at the drop of a hat. So for me, it's more about the relationships I have with the managers and making sure they have what they need. You know, when we had less teams because we've got women's teams and stuff now and so many games to go to, but when we had less, I used to get out to a lot of other games. I'd do a bit of scouting. I'd watch other teams we're going to play. I would look for other players and things like that. Now we have people doing that for us. I'm a little bit less involved in it, but certainly involved in any signings of any significant transfers and just mainly making sure the budget is there for the managers to do what they need to do. I've been very fortunate, Jeff. I haven't had to sack a manager yet. So both managers we've got, the men's team manager was our only manager. I was the manager before that, and I appointed him, and he was someone I've known previously.
He sacked himself.
Yeah, I literally sacked myself. It's true. Best decision I've ever made, by the way.
I'm like, oh mate, I've had one.
Yeah. And then women's manager, we did a merger with an existing team, so they were already there as a setup. And they were fantastic, and they've continued to be fantastic. So that was one part of the job that I don't look forward to having to do. But yeah, hopefully, if you can have, I mean, I'm sure you agree. I'm come from a football background of wanting managers to be around for a while and not wanting them changing every 5 minutes and having that consistency. You know.
Yeah, 100%.
Spencer, last question I got for you regarding hashtags. I want to touch on TST year 2. Last year, I remember Seb was like, I can't believe we're in a tournament with West Ham. Like, this is crazy. This is a club I love. I can't believe it. Has there been a moment for you, and I know you're talking about keeping the club around forever, but has there been a moment for you where you've been able to step back and be like, wow, I can't believe we are here, or I can't believe we've gotten to do this specific thing?
Honestly, it's almost every week. Like we've played some huge things. We actually have played West Ham in a women's game in a friendly. We actually won, but they didn't bring their full team out, so I'm not going to hold that against them. But in terms of first teams, like again, the women's certainly higher up than the men in terms of who they get to mix it with. You know, like we've beaten like Norwich, QPR, AFC Wimbledon, Southend. I mean, there's loads I'm forgetting. Who's in our league now? Portsmouth, Ipswich, like big household names. I mean, this is a really good example of what you just said because it was actually a negative feeling. We got knocked out the Women's FA Cup a couple of weeks ago by Norwich. So Norwich are in the league below us, believe it or not. And that's the same Norwich as the men's Norwich that are in the Premier League and Championship consistently. And we beat them like 7-0 last year and I think 4 or 3-0. Like we were quite a lot better than them. When they beat us in the FA Cup the other week, they beat us 1-0 and fair play to them. They had a game plan. It was, you know, we are a higher ranked team. We were the massive favourites going into it. They put all 11 players behind the ball. They got a goal on the break and then basically just never left their box after that. And it worked. And that's football. I'm not going to complain about it because we've done that to teams before. But what I tried to do after the game when everyone was gutted, because there's a lot of prize money in the Women's FA Cup and we can actually go quite far in it, in theory. So we were gutted, but I tried to put some context on it. I said to myself, we've just played Norwich City, the Norwich City, at their multi-million-pound training complex, and they have had to go backs to the wall to get a result against the YouTube-created #United. And when they beat us, they celebrated like they won the World Cup. So I tried to take some joy from that moment because
That's
we've
fucking
made this
brilliant.
club out of nothing, you know, and Norwich were buzzing to beat us.
Because you took the good out of the bad. There was
Yeah.
like, is it Joe Willock?
Yeah.
Like he's like his thing with he's like, whenever something's bad, like, and you feel like you're in the shit, he's like, say good. Like it's the most. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I love that video. I've got it saved on my phone.
Bro. It's literally my favorite. Like I look at it, he's like, every day, like if there's something bad, there's something good to take out of it. He's like, good, because you learn from it. Like you take that good out of the bad, and that's like you learn from it. You know, that's because then next year, I guarantee in the FA Cup, you'll be like, that game comes in. Okay, yeah, we're gonna spoil their party. Remember that feeling when they're celebrating like they won the World Cup or the FA Cup, and you go, hey, take that and put them down. You know, it's sorry for the for that part, but that quote for me is like, it sticks with me, man.
That video, mate, I've literally got it downloaded on my phone. And in the morning, I was showing my mate it the other day. If I'm like feeling I want a bit of motivation for the day,
bro,
I watch it. It's so hype.
It's
Honestly,
so
if you never
true.
watched it, go on YouTube, Jocko Willink, and it's just called Good. And he just like, oh, you got sacked from your job? Good. More time to get better. It's so
good. It's so badass. So shout out to him because he's a stud.
Yeah.
Well, great transition again. You guys are killing it with these transitions for me, making it very easy. Talk about getting knocked out last year, knocked out of TST. Now, # coming back for year 2, but it's a little different. There's now 48 teams instead of 32 in the men's open to all tournament. And then now there's an 8 teams women's tournament, 8 teams women's bracket, also for $1 million. Let's start. It's now 48 teams. Are you more confident than you were last year because you have experience, less confident because now there's more teams? Take us through your thought process of what TST year 2 could look like for you guys.
Well, I think it's something a lot of us felt in year 1 was like, this is the best time to win it, like the best chance to win it, because there's a lot of people, certainly from the bigger clubs, that maybe didn't know what it was going to be like. Maybe they didn't enter, or they did enter, but they didn't send their best players because they weren't sure on the level. So we felt we had a good chance to catch people off guard. And obviously with less teams, there's less games to the final. So year 1 was the year to really go and surprise people. And listen, we could have won it. I think what we learned from it, because we won our group, we looked really strong in our group, and then we come up against the Como side, and, you know, again, we could have won that game. But I think what I learned from it is about the specialist players, like the teams, the guys that got to the final, like they just were small-sided specialists, and the way they used their goalkeeper, the way they even played for TST, to the point where sometimes they didn't even mind going into the target score in a deficit, like, because they had a whole different, it literally changed the beast of their team the second they went to TST. So we learned a lot from that. I wouldn't say I'm more confident, because I think everyone else has learned that too. Anyone else has got anything about them, they can go and watch the games, they can research it. And yeah, there's just going to be more teams, and there's going to be, I think, higher quality teams. So I think it's never going to be, it was never easy, but it's never going to be as easy as it would have been the first year. Doesn't mean we can't win it. And we might, you know, make some slightly different changes, slightly different choices with our roster and things to try and be more TST focused. But I don't think we've ever been a favorite in this conversation. I think the only thing we had going for us first year, which people talked about, was the fact that we are a team. You know, we play every week, but it's not like we play 7-a-side every week. It's a different game, 11-a-side. So, but it's the camaraderie was definitely there. And like, even with in defeat, the lads had such a good time. So there was a lot of good positives to take. But I think, yeah, it's going to be harder than ever to win it this year. More teams, more quality for sure.
And then you got the women's tournament. We were chatting a little bit before. 8 teams, $1 million on the line. There's really no reason why anyone shouldn't be joining this women's tournament to try and win it. What are your thoughts on the women's tournament?
Relatively, if you just look at the economics of men's football and women's football, that is so much money. And it's the fact that it's 8 teams. I'm not saying I think it's great that it's the right prize money for both things. But I'm just basically speaking.
I think the men need I need another bump up.
I just think if you're
48 teams, jeez,
how many games you got to win in the women's one? 4 games?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you want to win at least 2 group play games,
games, yeah,
semifinals and finals.
I mean,
we'll do that in the fucking first round. Then, by the way, we have in the first 2 days, you're playing like 4 games. You're like, all right, and you're still not through. You still have to wait.
That was a slog, by the way. The game times was a slog, especially for us because we'd obviously come from England, so we had a bit of jet lag in there. We had a day before the tournament to get started, to get comfortable. But like I think one of our games was like the equivalent of playing at 3 a.m. in England time, or maybe 4 a.m. It was like 10:30 on the ground or something, and that was weird because you played at like 1 p.m. and then you've had like a massive break and you play again. Anyway, but back to the women's, I think anyone who's got anything about them in women's football should be entering this. I can't wait to see the teams that end up being in it because, like, I'm pretty confident $1 million you could buy any player in women's football with that, in the sense of that is the record transfer fee is less than that right now.
Yeah.
So what you could do with winning that compared to what a top level men's team could do with $1 million, because let's be honest, if West Ham enter again on the men's and they send their best players and win it all, $1 million doesn't touch the sides for what a Premier League club costs to run. But $1 million for a women's team could change everything. So it should be the best of the best of the best entering that.
It's definitely going to be very exciting. The one team that, and maybe something's changed between when we're recording this and when we release this, but Heather O'Reilly's team is back. She could potentially have a huge pool of former and current U.S. women's national teams players to pull from. And I'm not fully versed on, European women's football. Who do you view would be, if they just brought their singular team, would be the most dominant team? Would it be a single Premier League team? Would it be, a national team? Like what is it like outside of the US? And I know we just had a World Cup.
Yeah, so if you look at the World Cup, obviously, like, I'm biased, but England did pretty well. We got to the final. We are one of the best teams. US's era of dominance, some would say, is slipping a little bit. I don't think they got worse. I just think the other countries are catching them up because for so 100%. Many decades, the US women just won everything, right? So, like, that is one thing the Heather Riley group will always have, is they're just winners. They've just won so much in their career. They don't really know how to do anything else. But if you're talking about modern day, like right now, pros, then if it's a club team, obviously, because it's all going to come back to what you're doing with the money. I don't think you're going to get like multiple teams linking up necessarily of active players, but yeah, I mean, in the Super League, we've got some fantastic teams, like Man City, Chelsea, and Arsenal's are always up there. But then outside of that, could international teams do it? Could we see an all-star international group go? I don't see why not.
It'd be interesting to see if that's against like be like club or FIFA rules, essentially, right? Like, because people have the contracts and you know like what restrictions or it's essentially, it's a new league, right? Like, hey, it's a tournament.
Yeah. What about like a Ryder Cup vibe? Could there be like a Team Europe? Like,
that would be cool.
Is that breaking any rules? Because there's no like continental international tournaments.
The best part about TST, as of right now, there are no rules. So it could be Jeff Cameron and Spencer's women's team that you guys own. It could be whatever. And that's why I think it's so exciting. And we've alluded to it so far is, there's really no reason, if you're a top of the top women's soccer player in the world, to not at least inquire about participating.
Or if I'm girls at college that are like now getting paid by the NCAA, and like I would be like, all right, we want to make an all-star team with all the studs and put that together. Because one is like they're just finishing up their season, they're fit, they're sharp right now. Like, do it.
Great shout. That's a really good shout.
Like you could have 2 college teams, but like you have all the all-stars from the East and the West. Like that could be. So if anybody's listening out there, just make sure you pay attention to that.
And then that's just, it all comes back to the money ultimately. Like, you could create a really good college team of individuals maybe who just love the idea of winning and their share of the money. Or it could be like a current club that says this is genuinely a way. It's like it doesn't even have to be looked at as a punt, because it's like, at the worst, it's just a great preseason trip, right? And if you can fund that because you're doing a preseason tour anyway, make this it. But the plus side is you might come over $1 million that absolutely superpowers your season next year. So yeah, I can't wait. If Patrick Catrone's turning out as a 25-year-old pro for Como in the men's side, the women should be littered with top tier players.
So outside of the women's, this is my last question for you. Jeff may have a few more. You saw who showed up last year. You mentioned Patrick. You mentioned, you guys were in a group with Natty, and they had Ocho Cinco there. So there's really no one that's outside of the realm of possibilities to be at TST. Who are some people or teams that you would be excited to see involved with this year?
Well, I mean, I loved it when we saw people from the non-soccer world, if you like the Chad Ochocinco's. I think there's some great characters and people that have been talking about TST on social media and stuff that I'd love to see come and play and see what they can bring to it. But equally, the standard, I think, is going to be even higher this year. And I think that it's going to take people taking it very seriously to win it. So it's hard because I love TST and I love the format and I love being sort of part of it. So as a football person, I want to see it grow and grow and grow. But as a hashtag person, I want everyone good not to come. I want you all to stay home because I would love the $1 million. So that is a constant battle I'm facing in my mind. But no, I mean, there's loads of clubs, there's so many big clubs. I think some of them were talking about maybe entering in the first year, and maybe they saw enough in what was an amazingly run tournament to jump out this year, because even like the Dortmunds and the West Hams and that came last year, the way they approached it squad wise, like in Dortmund particularly, and I'm a Dortmund fan, I like Dortmund a lot, but they probably would have been a bit embarrassed maybe with some of the score lines because of the team they sent out there. And I think, there's no reason why they couldn't send a team of maybe young lads coming through the academy, maybe some lads who are about to retire, whatever. I understand why some pro teams aren't going to send their current roster, which makes a lot of sense. But there's definitely high level teams that could take a different approach this year and have a good chance of winning it, I think.
Agreed. But I also think they want to make it, well, I guess I would say TST still wants to make it a little bit more kind of fans, other people get involved. So I think it's like like the indoor, a lot of these, the two teams that we played, they were together for a long time before us, and they were World Cup 7v7 champions. And I'm they had this thing, they were subbing every two, they were pristine. They knew exactly what to do because they travel around and this is what they do. They go to tournaments. And I'm it's kind of a mixture. It's they're entering a tournament because this is what they do. They enter tournaments and they win tournaments and they go to the next tournament, where all these other footballers, they're I've never done this 7v7. Let's just put a team together and let's hope for the best. And then you're kind of show up and you're wow, and then you think of it, the two teams that won in the final were teams that were structured and they played with each other before. They won tournaments before. So I think you kind of need a little bit of maybe there's some limitations. Eventually, I think there'll be some limitations, I would guess, right?
Yeah.
Don't you think, Andrew?
I think there's
no limits. No limits.
That's the beauty of it, though, right? Right now, it is this sort of Wild West. There's $1 million. How do you want to win it? And there's different approaches. From an entertainment perspective, I completely hear what you're saying, Jeff, because I also think there's some rule changes that could potentially come in that I'd like to see come in that I think would make it better all round, better a spectacle for the fan, definitely, but also just tactical things, certain ways certain teams might have been playing for TST and maybe playing it around the back a little bit towards the end. I think there's things you could do to discourage that, to make it just more of an entertaining spectacle. That's what it's all about, right? That's why we're trying to put on a show. Every single team, only one team's going to win it. There's going to be 47 disappointed teams, but we've all got a duty to put on a show because it's the spectacle that allows the thing to be 100%. There. No one wants to watch it. There's no prize money. So we've all got a duty to that.
That target time changed the game. It was just completely different. We didn't know. No one, and the crazy thing is, like you said, no one knew what to expect. We just go in there the first as all right, we have a chance to win $1 million. All right, we don't know what's going on. And it was just mental to see everybody had their own different approach and how structured and then after the first game, it was out of the box. All right, we got to just do this. Then you start to see, and then when you make it to the playoffs or out of your group, then you kind of you're doing a little bit more adjustments, but it was definitely a whirlwind, but it was like an excitement. Like it was something different that as a player I haven't experienced, and it was fucking awesome.
It was,
Straight.
man. And you know what was funny? Like we were there. We only played. I think we only played games on 2 different days. I think because we got knocked out in the first knockout phase. But it felt like we'd been playing for like 5 days because of the way the games were and they were spaced out. We were like, did we only play games on that day and that day? Oh yeah, we did. But it was. I think that's a sign of success when something that actually was really short felt like this long thing, and not in a bad way. It felt like this epic, like almost season thing we'd been on, because there's so many different things that happened each step of the way. But I mean, you'll probably relate to this even more, having played so much football at such a high level, Jeff. Like when you, as you know, like all your football career, you spend getting used to playing games out. You know, once you're in a position of advantage, depending on who you are and your tactic is, you're going to want to see the game out. So at 1-0 up, 2-0 up, you play football differently to how you play at 0-0. Or 1-0 down. And what I found so fascinating about TST is it turned that on its head, because we could be winning a game. Let's say winning a game 2-1. Everything, all of your training tells you, and it's subconscious, but you sort of start to play within yourself and you
A little bit
compact.
more structured.
Yeah, you're less aggressive.
Don't
But then when
expose
you go
yourself.
into TST, you have to turn that part of your brain off because you have to score again. So even though for the last 10 minutes you've been in this play the game out mentality, nowhere in football does that ever switch without goals going in against you. It stays the same. But suddenly TST, you have to say to your players. So I found one thing that was effective was just changing the lineup when you get into TST. Because if you're going with the same players, they've just spent 10 minutes protecting the lead, and you need guys to come in and feel like it's 0-0. It's like an old adage, isn't it? Football, it's 0-0, lad. You'd always say it's 0-0, and it's not, because you need to think it's 0-0. How do you? It's like psychology. It's massive.
Yeah, 100%. Just because it comes natural. Like, all right, let's keep the ball. Let's wait for them to counter, like open up, and then we'll hit them in the counter attack, because you're up 1-0, and you're like, okay, we got to go in the target time. But then you're like, you don't want to go too much because then they'll score. And then that's like how we ended up getting up. We were just done, fatigued, and we're like, I don't think we didn't have that energy to go forward. We're like, as soon as they tied it, and we're like, yeah, that's us done. Like we knew we couldn't, like, because we didn't have the legs, we didn't have the depth, and then they were changing, and so I'm like, oh, this is nonstop. But it is. It's in our. It's what you do for so long. It's being told like, no. It's like when I try to play pickleball. Breck and I will go play, and like we will hit shots that people are like, you can't get there, and we're running to every single shot, and then they just go dink, because we're like hitting it and then we're moving. So it's a constant thing. Like, no, you got to hit it, and then you got to wait, because it's like the pass and move thing. But they're like, no, you got to get there, and then you got to wait. And I'm like, oh, because I'm constantly doing this. So I'm telling my mind I have to stop, which is so not right, and keep your feet moving to receive the ball and the next pass. It's a complete opposite.
Yeah.
So it's funny, because that's how your mindset is in a match. It's like, all right, we got to bunker in now.
Yeah.
Play with the lead. Now, target time blows that shit up.
Yeah, once TST's been around for a bit, you'll have people that have like maybe even been training for it for a period of years, to the point where that is how they play. You get people that are small-sided specialists and stuff like you talked about, but the target score time bit specifically is so new and novel that no one's had time to really adjust for it, train for it. I mean, that's the most fascinating thing. In the time since the last TST to this one, have there been teams maybe that played in the first one, maybe that didn't, that have just gone away and just planned their whole season around finishing with TST, and they've just trained for it all year, because they would be hard to beat.
Yeah.
Well,
if teams are just prepared for it.
We will find that out very shortly as teams are unveiled, as the field starts to come together. Spencer, before we let you go, anything else about TST, hashtag football soccer, that you want to say before we let you out of here?
Well, first of all, if anyone's watching this and they're maybe thinking about entering TST and they're on the fence, like, genuinely, I would say, first of all, there's going to be a lot of people trying to get those spots. There's no guarantee you'll even get one. But if you're in a position to do it, you won't regret it, because it is such fun, honestly. Like, we've done some incredible things at hashtag United, but it's right up there. It's a real sort of landmark moment in my calendar now, next summer. Can't wait for it. From our perspective, yeah, I mean, we were playing at 2 new levels this year. We were coming off the back of a double promotion going into TST, both our men and women. Our women are currently sitting top again of this new league, which is the 3rd tier. If we go up, they have to go full-time professional, as I mentioned. So that's a massive challenge for the club. It's again why winning TST would be really handy. We're probably going to look to get some more investment and stuff in the future because we want to take it as far as we can. So it's really exciting times at hashtag, but honestly, taking part in TST is one of the most exciting things we do. So we can't wait for it.
Well, we thank you for joining us. That was a great way to close it out. Looking forward to seeing you and the hashtag gang this summer, seeing who you unveil on your team. Personally, we'll be upset if PK Humble is not there, but we'll see what we'll see what you guys have planned. And when we have you back on the show, we'll just talk for an hour about PK.
It could be easily done, and we should get him on the show. More importantly, you just not have to heavily edit it though, as your media team would have learned in North Carolina.